Have you ever felt like you were drowning, even when the water seemed perfectly calm? Like the whole world was moving forward, but you were stuck, watching from the sidelines, feeling a heavy weight on your chest that no one else could see. This isn't just about a moment of doubt. It's about a season, a deep, consuming feeling that whispers you're not good enough, that you're falling behind, that life is happening to you instead of for you. It's a feeling of being untethered, drifting without an anchor. Today we're going to step into a story that many of us might find ourselves living in some way. It's about navigating those rough waters, about a journey from the deepest struggle to finding a profound peace and purpose, not just in external circumstances, but deep within. Because sometimes the biggest battles are fought within ourselves, and the greatest victories are found when we finally look up. David was, by all accounts, a good-hearted young man. At 28, he had the kind of bright, hopeful eyes that spoke of ambition and a future he was eager to build. But lately, those eyes held a weariness, a shadow that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. He felt the weight of the world, not on his shoulders, but pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't one grand catastrophe that brought him low. It was a slow, agonizing erosion, a series of small, relentless waves that chipped away at his foundation. First, there was the job, a steady, if uninspiring marketing role he'd held for 3 years. One Tuesday afternoon, he found himself in a sterile office, listening to HR deliver the news with practiced, regretful tones. Restructuring, they said. Nothing personal. But for David, it felt deeply personal. It felt like a verdict on his worth, a dismissal of his efforts. The severance package felt less like a cushion and more like a cruel farewell gift. He walked out into the harsh daylight, the city noise suddenly deafening, and for the first time felt a cold knot of fear tightening in his gut. Then came the bills. They didn't care about restructuring. Rent, student loans, car insurance. They kept arriving, crisp envelopes that felt heavier than lead in his hands. He watched his savings dwindle, a digital countdown of his security, every transaction a painful reminder of his dwindling resources. He started skipping meals, telling himself it was just a temporary diet. He stopped going out, not just because he couldn't afford it, but because he couldn't bear to face friends who were still on their upward trajectory. Every casual, "What have you been up to?" felt like an interrogation, highlighting his failures. The financial stress, like a creeping vine, began to strangle other aspects of his life. His relationship with Sarah, which had once been a source of joy and comfort, began to fray. He grew withdrawn, irritable, snapping at small things, unable to share the crushing burden he carried. He pushed her away, not wanting her to see the crumbling version of himself. One quiet evening, over lukewarm coffee, she gently, tearfully, told him she couldn't do it anymore. The silence that followed her words was louder than any argument they'd ever had. It was the sound of something precious breaking, irrevocably. He watched her walk out, her silhouette against the city lights, and a profound loneliness enveloped him. A silence so deafening in the small apartment that he could almost taste it. He scrolled through social media, a self-inflicted torture. Friends celebrated promotions, posted pictures of exotic vacations, announced engagements, bought first homes. David saw their highlight reels, polished and perfect, and felt like he was watching a different movie entirely, a movie where he wasn't even an extra. He wasn't just feeling behind. He felt like he was stranded on a deserted island, while everyone else sailed past on luxury liners. Doubt wasn't just a thought. It was a constant companion, whispering insidious lies. "You're a failure. You'll never catch up. What's the point?" He found himself staring at the ceiling for hours, the future a blank, terrifying abyss. The truth was, he was adrift. He was just floating, without a map, without a compass, and rapidly losing hope. Then, the final blow. A crisp white envelope slid under his door. Not a bill this time, but an eviction notice. 2 weeks. That's all he had left in the place he called home. He read it once, then again, the words blurring through unshed tears. He crumpled to the floor, the paper falling from his numb fingers. This is it, he thought. This is truly the end. He found himself later that evening, not in his apartment, but sitting on the cold curb outside, his head buried in his hands. The city lights blurred around him, an indifferent glow. The sounds of traffic, distant sirens, laughter from a nearby restaurant. It all felt like background noise to the thunderous silence in his own head. "What have I done wrong?" he whispered to the cracked pavement, his voice hoarse, barely audible. He felt utterly, completely abandoned. Abandoned by luck, abandoned by opportunity, abandoned by everyone and everything he had ever held dear. The failures piled up like a monument to his despair, crushing him. Then, through the suffocating fog of his own misery, a memory, soft and warm, flickered to life. His grandmother. He remembered her hands, gnarled with age, always holding a well-worn Bible. He remembered her gentle voice, full of unwavering faith, even through her own trials. He pictured her in her favorite armchair, sunlight streaming through the window, her lips moving in silent prayer, a quiet strength radiating from her very being. He could almost hear her saying, "David, even in the darkest night, God is there. You just have to trust." A phrase, something she used to quote, bubbled up from the depths of his subconscious, a fragile lifeline in the vast ocean of his despair. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Proverbs 3:5-6. He hadn't thought about that verse in years, not truly. It had been just words, but now it felt like a whisper of ancient wisdom, a profound truth spoken just for him in that exact moment. A desperate, guttural sound escaped him, somewhere between a sob and a prayer. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't a perfectly formed request. It was raw, unfiltered desperation. "God," he choked out, looking up at the vast, indifferent sky. "If you're real, if you're listening, I don't know what to do. I need help. I need guidance. I need a sign. Just something." It was a plea, a surrender, an admission that he had absolutely nothing left to rely on, but a faint, almost forgotten hope. In that complete surrender, in that moment of absolute brokenness, something shifted. It wasn't a bolt of lightning or a booming voice from the heavens. It was internal, a tiny spark, a flicker of hope in the overwhelming darkness, just enough to breathe, just enough to wonder, what if? The spark was tiny, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It wasn't a sudden fix. The eviction notice was still real, the bills still piled up, the loneliness still lingered. But something inside David had changed. That night, instead of staring blankly at the ceiling, he rummaged through old boxes until he found his grandmother's Bible, still with her pressed wildflowers marking certain pages. He didn't understand everything he read, but he began. He started with the Psalms, finding comfort in words that echoed his own heartache and pleas. He started small. He began praying, not just in desperate pleas, but in quiet conversations each morning, and again before bed. He didn't ask for a new job or for Sarah to come back. He asked for strength, for clarity, for trust. He started waking up a little earlier, forcing himself to read a few verses, to sit in silence, just listening. It was difficult at first, his mind racing with worries. But slowly, gradually, a sense of calm began to settle over him. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was peace. A quiet anchor in the stormy seas of his life. He found a small, unassuming church a few blocks from his apartment. He'd never considered himself a church person, but the memory of his grandmother pulled him in. The first few Sundays, he sat in the back, observing, listening. He found a community there, people who were kind, who didn't judge, who offered warm smiles and genuine conversation. He joined a small Bible study group, tentative at first, but slowly he began to open up, to share fragments of his struggle, and found not pity, but understanding and encouragement. He was no longer completely alone. The remarkable thing was that life didn't magically transform around him. The bills didn't disappear. Sarah didn't suddenly return. He still had to find a new apartment, and the job hunt was a grueling, disheartening process. Yet, something profound was happening within David. He was learning to trust, not in his own ability to fix everything, which had clearly failed him, but in something bigger, something that whispered of a plan, a purpose he couldn't yet see. He wasn't waiting for a miracle. He was building discipline, one small, consistent act of faith at a time. He started exercising again, not to look good, but to clear his head, to build mental resilience. He used the quiet moments of job searching to write, to explore ideas, to rediscover talents he'd long neglected. The external chaos remained, but internally, David was rebuilding, brick by quiet brick, on a new foundation of faith and trust. He was learning that even when the path ahead was dark, he didn't have to walk it alone. Life, as it often does, remained imperfect. There were still challenging days, moments of doubt that crept in like shadows. He didn't wake up one morning to find all his problems vanished. That's not how faith works, not usually. Instead, David discovered something far more enduring and powerful, a transcendence, a way to navigate the storms without being capsized by them. His faith wasn't a magic wand. It was a new pair of glasses, allowing him to see beyond his immediate circumstances, to find peace not from the storm, but in it. He did find a new job. It wasn't his dream job, not the high-flying marketing role he'd once envisioned. It was a modest position at a non-profit, helping with their outreach. The pay was less, but the work felt meaningful, imbued with a sense of purpose that had been missing before. He moved into a smaller, cozier apartment, making it a place of quiet reflection and gratitude. The relationships he formed at church became a new family, a network of support and genuine care. His life wasn't picture perfect, not the kind of highlight reel he used to envy. But David had something far more valuable: clarity, direction, and a quiet, unshakable confidence. The fear that had once paralyzed him had been replaced by a deep sense of peace. He understood now that life's true riches weren't found in possessions or external validation, but in the internal landscape of his heart, in the unwavering connection he had found. He was no longer adrift. He had found his anchor, and it was holding steady. He had found purpose in who he was, not what he had, and that made all the difference. Have you ever felt that shift? That quiet, powerful moment when you realized you weren't alone, that there was a strength beyond your own, a path unfolding even when you couldn't see past the next step? This story of David, like so many others, reminds us that while the struggles of life are real and often overwhelming, there is a profound peace to be found when we surrender our understanding and trust in something bigger than ourselves. It's about finding purpose not in our perfect circumstances, but in the unwavering belief that we are guided, loved, and never truly abandoned. You are not alone in your struggle, and you don't have to walk this path alone. If David's story resonated with you, if it sparked a flicker of hope or reminded you of your own journey, comment faith below. And for more stories of hope and inspiration like this one, make sure to subscribe.